Good evening and welcome to Praxis Peace Institute's Friday series. I'm Georgia Kelly, the director of Praxis, and this evening we have the distinct honor of hosting Dr. Ofer Zur live from Israel. He will tell us where he is exactly, but I want to give him an introduction first. He is a licensed psychologist, fellow of the American Psychological Association, lecturer, ethics consultant, and forensic expert. He was the founder and director of the Zur Institute, which offers over 180 online continuing education courses for mental health practitioners. He also has been practicing psychotherapy in California for over 25 years. He is one of the top experts in the field of psychological ethics, applying a non-dogmatic approach to multiple relationships and therapeutic boundaries. Some of Ofer's areas of expertise are very relevant for our discussion today. Before I ask a few questions and open this up for Q&A from those on the call, Ofer is going to give us an overview of what he is experiencing right now in Israel and who he's meeting with, what his purpose of going to Israel at this time was. So welcome, Ofer. It's just great to host you live from Israel today. Ofer, I don't think I can hear you. You need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
It's 5 o'clock in the morning here.
Shocking.
It's pretty incredible, very powerful visit at this time in Israel, this time of the Middle East, this time in Palestine. And one of the main thing that I would like to convey today is that I sure have failed with most Israelis so far, and so many Jews, is how do we put October 7 in context? I'm here in the kibbutz of my sister, for example, and she doesn't talk to me. And she doesn't talk to me because she view herself as a battered sister. Georgia, if I don't pronounce things right, interrupt me and
yes.
Translate it to English, okay?
The closed captioning got it. It captured it.
So my sister calls herself as a battered sister because I'm not 200% compassionate to what happened on October 7, and I put it in historical context. And I cannot say that I'm a big success among Jews in the United States or among Israelis here. So this lack of me being effective in putting October 7 in a context for Israelis and for Jews, or for world leaders who support Israel blindly, is crucial, because Israel lost a couple of thousand people, and of course hundreds of people got imprisoned, and by now Israel killed 40,000 people and perhaps 200 terrorists among them, and 20,000 children. 30,000 children and 10,000 women and 10,000 older people that were just living in Gaza, and the rest are starving. But what are being blamed here is for not having compassion to Israelis and Jews abroad. The Jews abroad are kind of on the whole spectrum. So how to put it in context? Am I clear, Georgia, so far?
Yes, yes.
interrupt me if I need to elaborate more. It's an emotional content. It's a lot of feeling involved in that, a lot of cognition involved. So when I look at context, I go to a couple of places. I go to 1948, when the State of Israel was established. And I go to 1967, even more so. So the refugee problem started in 1948, if not before, but to simplify it. In 67, Israel conquers the West Bank and Gaza, and the Egyptians were more than happy to give Gaza to Israel with the millions of refugees. Similarly, Jordan was more than happy to give the West Bank to Israel with the Palestinian refugees and non-refugees. And I've been to Egypt and talked to people about it. I've been to Jordan and talked to people about there, but also it's kind of well known. So Israel took, as part of the war in 1967, she had took Gaza in and the West Bank. And this is kind of the most important context to what happened in October. October did not happen in a vacuum. I can say 200 more times, and I don't feel I'm being heard by the people who really needs to hear me. So this is kind of political, global context. More specifically, I served in one of the biggest refugee camps in Gaza, being 20 years old, a lieutenant and a paratrooper, served in Gaza, one of the first military units that was placed in Gaza. Why they placed us in Gaza in 1970, I have no idea, except they wanted to show the power of the people who own Gaza, the Israelis. And I lost my first soldier brushing his teeth in the middle of the refugee camp. Because what the hell we were doing there? And I'll be a little bit graphic so you'll understand the level of emotions that I'm dealing here with this visit. So I don't believe we need to be there. We are driving in a small Jeep in a narrow street. It probably was half a feet on both sides of the Jeep in this narrow street, and somebody threw a hand grenade into the Jeep. And the person who threw the hand grenade, the Arab local guy, I assume, was not a good experienced soldier. He didn't wait 2 seconds before he threw the grenade. So I heard the flip of, what do you call it, the part of the, in English, part of the
I'm no help there.
Say it again?
I said, I'm no help there. I don't know anything about weapons.
Okay. So I heard it and I knew I have 2 seconds. So I picked it up and threw it back and killed him. Self-defense, but what the hell was I doing there? Kind of mix. I felt extreme guilt when I didn't protect a woman with 3 children, 2 children on her hands, not even ready to walk, another one holding on to her, standing on top of a roof of a house. 1970, that the Israelis just leveled her house because they saw some young man running out of the house in the morning, and they decided he may be a terrorist. So when I talk to you today and I think about October 7, I see these three children in my mind crossing the border and did what they did in October 7, because they were without a house. They probably lost one of the three. Or I see the children of the men that I killed with a hand grenade. To put it in context for so many Jews around the world, not all, and for Israelis, Georgia, it's the hardest thing. And I fail, it's not a word. So my sister called herself a battered sister because I'm not compassionate to what happened to October 7. Because I feel responsible for killing the parents when the children now did what they did in October 7. And I feel if I was in Gaza, I would have done the same. And it's so politically incorrect with most people, Georgia. So you're putting yourself in a big risk here.
But it's very surprising to me that this is risky. Context is what everything is all about. And yet this need that people have to stay with their story means they have to block out context. And we really want that from you and, for all of us to learn context. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
You're right, but I'm staying here in the kibbutz away from my sister. I'm not welcome in her house.
Oh.
And she literally called herself battered sister. And she's a woman from left, on the left. She stood in corners to protest the occupation. She's not a settler.
Now explain to everyone why she is not speaking to you right now. What you did that made her not speak to you?
Because that's a very good question. Thank you. And interrupt me and ask me, Georgia, as you know, we have done it before.
Thanks.
So she feels she and millions of other people feel my lack of compassion to focus on October 7, at least as if it happened in a vacuum. And I feel there was a fantastic movie of the Gatekeepers, it called, when 7 top Israeli generals say, if I was born in the West Bank, I'll be the head of the Intifada. I'll be the head of the Arab rebellion. I feel the same. I wouldn't like to be occupied. I'm trying not to use the F word. So, Georgia, give me some credit.
I am giving you lots of credit, yes.
Thank you. So, so the upset is that I'm not focusing on the immediate response and the vision and the pictures and the grief that Israeli experience appropriately on October 7. And I say, let's go to 48 and understand what happened. Let's go to 67. Let me tell you what I did to cause it.
How did they respond to that?
They don't talk to me.
Uh-huh.
Say, what the fuck is wrong with me? What are you? So literally, my sister doesn't talk to me. I'm not staying in her house. I'm staying in somebody else's house on the kibbutz because I'm not welcome in her house. Hmm. And she's a woman in black. She's a left. She's against the occupation.
But it was specifically not only that you see it in context, but specifically the apology paper airplane that you delivered. Tell us about that.
So you have a picture to show people? So I came here. Okay. I came here with 3 airplanes, paper airplanes, where I wrote in Hebrew and Arabic my apology to what I did in my service and what I did in the 73 war. Again, I was a lieutenant, paratrooper. I was a commander officer. Killed people, hurt people, brought a lot of widows and orphans into the world. And I have this airplane that I threw already over the fence into the West Bank, apologizing to what I did. And on Monday, I'm going to, as close as I can get to the Gaza fence, to say sorry to what I did there. And this is what my sister and the other Israelis just thinking, and it's a metaphor for me. I do it really for myself. The airplane, for God's sake, will not get anywhere. Even though I'll come in the morning, I know where's the wind coming from. And I mean, I'm all strategic about it. But I do it for myself. It's called appropriate guilt. That every one of the participants here can go over their life and say, I'm sorry that I did that 20 years ago, 5 years ago, yesterday, this morning. So it's not neurotic guilt, or it's not a Catholic guilt. Catholic guilt is we don't separate thoughts from actions, feeling from actions. So if I see a pretty woman, I want to sleep with her, it's as bad as sleeping with her.
No, I wouldn't say that, having been brought up Catholic.
You would say that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, I would. We'd call it Jewish guilt. How is that?
Right. I wanted to ask you, Ofer, are there any people there, like on the kibbutz where you are now, who agree with how you see this?
Very good question. The way we say it in Hebrew, you can count them on one hand of a person who lost 3 fingers.
Hey, that doesn't.
In other words,
yeah,
very, very few. When I went to the West Bank and walked around Hebron and Bethlehem for the last 2 days, for long days walking, talking to people, they could relate. And this is a people who are upset with the murder of young American women or on October 7th, and the few rapes that may have happened and the mutilation. But they can easily understand what I'm talking about, context, because they are oppressed in the Middle East. One of them cannot see his wife and 4 children because she's reside in Jerusalem and he resides in Hebron. Because the Israelis divided the West Bank to A, B, and C. And who is allowed where? I didn't flash my passport some of the times because I was in the Arab section, whatever it was. Sometimes I shouldn't have said that I'm even speaking Hebrew, because we went to talk to people who were extreme. So the Arab population understand the context because they don't have land, they don't have, I mean.
They're living the context.
So now we have the religious Jewish settlers 2 days ago just went to a village and killed. And because of the government in Israel, they're not even being arrested on a daily basis. On my website, I put some of the pictures of the burned olive trees, 3,000 years old olive trees. The settlers just burns. And sometimes the Israeli government helped them because each settlement, hundreds of them, there are 500,000 settlers in the West Bank. Jewish settlers. And so when I drove off one of these roads to a settlement in the West Bank, on both sides of the road, I see burn 2,000 to 3,000 years old olive trees. So they won't be close to this road that leading to the settlement. And there are hundreds of settlements, 500,000 people living there in the West Bank. And each settlement cuts the West Bank into another piece because there's a road with fences and cameras on the road to this illegal government settlement. And 3 days ago, the Israeli government approved a settlement, another one adding to the 1,000. There is hundreds of them that are illegal, but each one of them is established with a synagogue and with sometimes the local people, the Palestinian, work there but it's racism in its core. So I'm saying all that when you ask me about context. So when I hear about October 7 and all the upsetness, and my sister knows it, but the trauma of October 7 took all the years. Let's start with 48, when Israel got independence, and 67, when the occupied territories got into the picture, as if October 7 just started a new trend. And I feel responsible, and this is why I'm throwing the paper, for killing the people 50 years ago when their children. And I know if I was there, I will be one of the people.
Now, you have spoken to Palestinians while you're there. Can you tell us something about the Palestinians you've talked to?
You know, it's kind of a no-brainer. Some of them I couldn't say that I'm an Israeli because it was not safe.
Oh.
The ones that the kind of educated, sophisticated Palestinians, and when it was legally kind of for me to be there, it was very, very complex. I mean, the Middle East is complex. So when I did tell people, like, for example, I met this woman with a jihad. She was with black hijab. Mm-hmm. You can see her eyes, but she was a professor at the local university. And we talked about this, we talked about that. It was so interesting. I showed her the picture that my sister disowned me about throwing the airplane, saying sorry. And Georgia, you won't believe, she, with a black thing, she's not supposed to look at my eyes. She got teary and gave me a hug. She could have lost her life on that. But she was touched. So for my sister, it's the biggest insult, my airplane, asking for forgiveness. For this Arab Muslim woman, she hasn't heard it. She hasn't seen it. The apology. I mean, it was such a moving moment. I mean, it was like, so I was crying with her. I mean, she's not supposed to look me in the eyes. So I get two responses to my airplane. My sister doesn't talk to me. And this religious, traditional woman couldn't stop the tears. So it's complex, like.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed in some of the pictures I had seen earlier is a lot of the Palestinian women don't wear those things. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. Some of them wearing it on the streets that one may not work it at work. I have a colleague in Iran, and she sent me 3 pictures. She's translating one of my books to Farsi. So I'm in close contact with her in Iran. And she sent me 3 pictures. One picture of her walking the streets with a hijab, black. The second one, she's seeing clients. She will look like any other Western woman. And then she sent me a picture of half naked in a party. It was just fascinating to see how, and she's not complaining about anything. She said, Dr. Zur, here is who I am. At work, on the street with a hijab, all black, you can see barely her eyes, and in a party. Not easy to be a woman. She didn't complain. She didn't complain. And it was mind-boggling.
I'd like you to explain something because the expression we hear it coming from both the Israelis and the Palestinians. What does it mean from the river to the sea?
Some of them, say it again.
From the river to the sea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good question. I talked to my attorney's son about it. It's when we have from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's spoken with millions of demonstrators on campuses in the US. This is where it erupted. Where I would say 80% of them wouldn't know where to put Israel or Palestine on the map. So what they mean by that, most of them, is free Palestine. But free Palestine does not take Israel out of the picture. It's just giving them the West Bank and give them half of the distance between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, whereas the West Bank is, and Gaza. But when you say from the river to the sea, Israel is a goner.
Okay.
And they don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of forgiving and it'd be a little bit less forgiving when I try to explain to them on a map that from the river to the sea, that means Israel doesn't exist. And I have a sister here that I love, and I have old lovers, and I don't know, and I have a nephew who takes care of me. So the river of the sea you can look at it as anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic necessarily, but it can be anti-Semitic. So I separate anti-Semitics, the hater of Jews anywhere on the planet, anti-Zionist as a people who are against the state of Israel, and anti-occupation as a people who the state of Israel has the right to exist, but without occupying Gaza and the West Bank. Like when Biden say, I'm a Zionist, and he has a right to say, he said, I'm supporting the legitimate state of Israel. It doesn't mean he accepts the occupation, and he's not anti-Semitic. So, and I have a paper on that online that you saw. So we are differentiating anti-Semitic against Jews anywhere in the world, anti-Zionist, that Israel shouldn't exist as a state, or it maybe doesn't exist at all, or with the West Bank combined, not as a Jewish state, but as Palestine, with Palestinians and Jews together. And there's anti-occupation. But a lot of the people that talk from river to the sea, either they don't know, or they are really against the state of Israel, or it's an expression of anti-Semitism that you bark at Jews. So it's a lot of ignorance in the statement that people do not really understand what it means. And so many of the people on campuses in the US wouldn't know where to put the finger of where Israel and the West Bank is on a map.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So the statement has a lot of connotation, a lot of explanation, a lot of meaning, and a lot of ignorance.
Well, another part of that statement, what you say, people who are anti-Zionists oppose the state of Israel. What Zionism has come to mean here with a lot of people I've known is not that they don't see the state of Israel shouldn't exist. It's not that, but it's being opposed to the Jewish people who think it's fine to have all the settlements and don't have any problem with it. So the word Zionist has had different meanings.
So I separate, you're
Yeah, you
absolutely
did. I
right.
heard you. Yeah.
I try to separate anti-Zionism from
From
anti-occupation. So for
right.
me, for example, I would like to see one state between the river and the sea with Jews and Palestinian. Good luck.
Yeah, right.
So I'm against the occupation. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm Jewish, and family is Jewish, and my friends are Jewish, and we tried to convert you, but we failed. So
Inconvertible.
I know.
You know,
So you're right. The separation is nuanced and not nuanced, and there's a lot of ignorance on the U.S. campuses, and it end up with the anti-Semitic undertone because when the
but it's
high
not
school
meant that way.
kids, what? Say it again.
It's not meant that way.
It's yes and no. The ignorant, for example, in Berkeley High, where the Jewish high schoolers are afraid to walk out because they'll be from the river to the sea. This is anti-Semitism. So it's not, it's really, we need to acknowledge that it's mixed. And this is a fact of life that the student in Berkeley High and so many other places are afraid to go on recess out for being haunted. This is anti-Semitism because it's not against the state of Israel. They're living here, they're born here, they don't think about going there. They're just Jews.
Okay, I want to ask you something else. And this is the last one I'll ask before I'll open it up for people to ask questions who are on the call. A lot of people who would define themselves as Zionists think that every Palestinian is Hamas. Do you know people who think that way, and why do they think that way? I mean, this is how I hear a lot of people who justify what's happening in Israel.
40,000 people being killed in Gaza and 100,000 in.
Well, you heard that in the live program you did with us a few months ago, where someone said everyone could be Hamas who's a Palestinian.
Yeah, so I think after October, with this sense of survivability and fear, Hamas, Arabs, West Bank all got mixed up together. The same way that anti-Semitism on both ends, the fear kind of create a divide. I mean, I remember when I went to Moscow, when Gorbachev came to power, and so every American was somebody who wanted to destroy Russia, and vice versa, the hate. So you're absolutely right. When we get into this place of fear, we categorize everybody. But the people who took me around were Palestinians, you know? And so educated and intelligent. To think about now as one state between the river and the sea, not a Jewish state, but as Palestine combined, which can be the ideal in the world, is a joke, is a dream, stupid dream. Now we need a few generations to recover from the killing both sides. Another interesting thing that you and I talk, and perhaps I'll throw it in, as a psychologist, I'm fascinated with how cruel some people on the Israeli side torturing prisoners, and how some of the Palestinians tortured the Israelis, and so much of it is documented with cell phones everywhere in the world. You and I talked a little bit about Zimbardo experiment back in the 70s in Stanford when he gave a test. I'll take question after that, but I think it's kind of a very interesting right now to recap it. So Zimbardo, a psychiatrist in Stanford in the 70s, took 30, I think it was 30 students and gave them tests. So anybody who scored sociopathic or anything crazy was ruled out. Only normal people were part of the experiment. And they were supposed to be prisoners. Prison guards, sorry. They're supposed to be prison guards. And what happened was the third of the prison guards in the fake prison in Stanford were really nice and understood it's a experiment and were nice to the prisoners, also Stanford student. Half of them, a third of them were kind of nice and not nice. But what's most important after Abu Ghraib and after what happened in Iraq and what happened in Israel right now, a third of them, of the Stanford normal people, were cruel to the prisoners, so they had to stop the experiment. So you and I talked about the importance of context. How when you put people into certain situation, you can be shocked.
Right.
And it happened with what they call the American prison in Cuba.
Guantanamo, yeah.
Guantanamo, so Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, Israel. It's a reflection of human nature. It's not specific to what happened here, but I think it's good to know for people, if you're not familiar, go to the Stanford Zimbabwe experiment to see how normal people like you and I,
They
and
manipulated.
who expect will
and it
become.
happens when people point to atrocities in a war and take, again, that atrocity out of context. Every war has atrocities. So to pick an atrocity out of one war to make a case for something, to me, it's ridiculous, because there's no war without atrocities. There's no war without rape. There's no
But
war.
also there's real life
Yeah.
atrocities, as you and I
Yes.
have been talking for all these years. There's people who don't care about the environment, people who don't care about nature, people don't care about the poor. I mean, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. So now, if people want to ask questions, I'm going to be looking for your raised hands. Or else we'll
We
just.
can interrupt. We are in Israel. We can interrupt.
Okay.
No raising hands.
Okay, I see Mike has his hand up. Mike, you want to go ahead? Unmute.
Wow. Hi. Yes, that was pretty incredible. I came in a few minutes late. I apologize for that. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I got a million questions, but I just want to basically ask one right now and see how it goes on through the evening. But I got to say that I'm asking this question mainly because this is something that my wife and I argue about. Okay, she was born in the Czech Republic. Her parents, both her parents before she was born, survived Auschwitz for years. They met the day they were liberated, got married, and had 3 children. And she lived in the Czech Republic. I'm just giving a little background. And she left there in the 80s and went to Canada, then came to San Francisco. But she's seen a lot, heard a lot. Most of the families were completely wiped out. The Jews in the Czech Republic didn't do too well. But anyway, my question is this. Thinking and arguing with my own brother about these things also. You know my brother. And somebody also said that you and I played basketball about 20 years ago up in Sonoma, but I don't really remember that we did that. I'm kind of taller than my brother Ken, and I'm a much better ball player than he is. But anyway, that's another story. Please let me ask this question.
Oh,
so
we'll come back and play again.
I love it. I still shoot around today, but I can't run too much. But anyway, so my question is basically one thing right now is this. So what do you say to people who say what happened on October 7th, okay, was so, these are first person accounts, interviews, whatever you want to say, was so horrendous and disgusting and hideous and horrible and beyond belief. I can't even repeat some of the crap that happened on that day, okay? And just horrible, the worst thing you can imagine. I don't know how much of it is true, to be honest. I never know how much of this is true, which drives me crazy. But if it's true, what, say, my wife says she's heard these interviews, these hostages that have been freed and talking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that this horrendous horror, this hell on earth, is something that no Israelis would ever do to any Palestinians or other people, that this would be beyond what Israelis are capable of. And that's why it was so insanely horrendous. This is the argument, the rationale.
I can't wait.
That's why. Netanyahu, and that question right there
Very,
really
very,
bothers
very
me.
good question.
Thank you very much.
So, which something I looked in the mirror a lot. What did I do? Growing up in a leftist family, and the killing I did. So I can't look down on the rage people experience because I killed out of indoctrination and want to be a hero. And a quick story. Last year when I came to Israel, I went to the Golan Heights, to one of the bunkers there, and decided to go in. So I'm walking into the bunker in the dark, took my cell phone out as a light. And then I stepped on a rock. And it brought me back to what I did in Egypt when I went in a tunnel and killed and stepped on the people's heads. And it just threw me back. So I'm telling you that to demonstrate to you, here is this leftist, intelligent psychologist. I'm more proud of being basketball players than psychologists, but that's another topic. So I move away from the judgment because I experience it. I lost 3 of my 4 grandparents in the Holocaust. One of the early pieces that my wife told me, if I write it, she'll divorce me, said, if I grew up in Nazi Germany in the 30s, I'll be the best SS officer. So how do we put it in context? Terrorists do not have usually tanks and artillery or even airplanes. So when a terrorist does September 11 here, we say it's not fair. But because they don't play the games that we can win. They shoot people on buses in Israel. Oh, that's terrible. But it's okay for us, for Israelis, to kill 40 people from the air in bombing. So they don't have the artillery. It's changing a little bit right now, but they don't have bombers. So they kill people, civilian, on buses. And we say it's not fair. Or rape, whatever, how much the story is true.
We call it an atrocity when war is the atrocity.
And they use different, very few people talk about the 40,000 Israel killed because they killed it with tanks and airplanes. But we see when the terrorists kill by hand or do September 11, we said, oh my God. But it's okay for us to go to Iraq and kill hundreds of thousands from the air and from the tanks and from the artillery because it's war. But September 11 is horrendous. So, I mean, we could talk about it a lot. Terrorists play the game that we say it's not fair because we cannot win it, because it's not with tank and artillery. They don't have it.
This is really
good. It has a bunch, drzur.com on all these issues, drzur.com. It's a good question. I hope I attended to some of it because some of what I study is a type of wars. Mm-hmm. Everybody complained about September 11, but they kill civilians because they don't have their artillery and the bombers and the what do you call it in the sea?
You know, it reminds me of our friend Sam Keene's book, which I always bring up when there is a discussion like this, Faces of the Enemy, how every group creates enemies and they use the same kind of language, the same pictures, the same demonization of the opposition. It's the same every single war. There's not an exception. And I think reading that book really can give context in a broad way of.
And you're right. Sam and I traveled to Moscow together to show them the pictures that they present of the Americans and how the Jews German presented the Jews as rats, because you can kill rat without guilt. And how, so you're right. Faces of the Enemy is what I moved actually to Sonoma for.
Really? Yeah, to me, it's one of those classics.
Sam and I went around the country, around the world.
Yeah, it's a book everyone who's concerned about war should read, Faces of the Enemy. It's just extraordinary. Or as one friend of mine said, I feel like underlining every line in the book. It's that kind of book.
I know, yeah, we worked on part of it together, yeah.
Yeah, I know you and Sam have been friends for a long, long time. Anyone else want to ask something or give a comment, or we're not going to?
Kathy, say something.
I don't see anyone with a hand up.
You have to unmute, Kathy.
Oh, Kathy, you're mute. There you are.
I just said Christine has a question. Let her go next. No,
okay, Christine. You want to unmute, Christine?
Yeah, I'm interested in the refuseniks. So there's evidently some people that are refusing to fight in Gaza or in the West Bank. And I don't know if they're like a legitimate group that one should contribute to, because I don't know enough about them. Like they're war resistors like ours were in the Vietnam era, or whether they're, three guys that don't have much of a following.
Very, very good question. I was supposed to go with Breaking the Silence people yesterday. They canceled the trip. What happened with people who refuse to serve is a couple of things. The guy that I had yesterday refused to serve in Gaza, so they put him in Lebanon. Kind of half-ass way of dealing with refuseniks. Traditionally, refusenik will spend a few months in Israeli prison, military prison, and get dismissed from the military. There have been some evolution with people who refuse to serve so they can serve, do like social services. The army tried not to go head on with them. So it has not erupted, because if now they say, okay, we won't send you to Gaza, but you can do some social work in a small town of poor people, it doesn't blow up to what happened in Vietnam War when you go to Canada, and it's a big deal. So it's subtle, it's not known, and the people, but that, like my sisters are so upset about October 7th, cannot tolerate the refusenik now. Even though she would probably be a refusenik before October 7th, or her children. Mm-hmm. So it's a very subtle, it's a good question, and you can imagine I kind of kept an eye on that. I was very disappointed. I paid for the trip, and they were supposed to take me all over the West Bank. They canceled it because of the fear of Iran bombing. Mm. So in Israel, if they spend some time rarely in prison, they try to divert them to other activities, military-related activities, social work, military activities. But we don't have the 60s here with the Vietnam. We have demonstrations that I've been part of when I came here, but it's not the same flavor that happened here in Vietnam. And because the sense of survivability and the immediacy, Vietnam was God. I mean, I know American were told if the Soviet go to Vietnam, next they are coming to
You know, the
Washington.
domino theory. Yeah, well,
So here it's a little bit different because, you know, there's 1 inch between East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. How do you give it back where bombs can fall? Or my sister's kibbutz, if you give them the West Bank, it's only 2 miles from the old border. It's very complex. I thought about 2 states for years when I left Israel. Is 2 states are possible right now? And in Jerusalem, to split Jerusalem, will the Israelis or the Jews will give East Jerusalem back as they should? Good luck. But Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. It's complex like hell. So it's 1 inch between East-West Jerusalem. How do you give it back when they can really bomb 50 miles in, and now they are just 2 inches? So good luck giving Jerusalem back. Can we have peace without giving Jerusalem back? No. There are 2 miles from my sister and 16 miles from Tel Aviv, where they can bomb 60 miles. So it's the complexities. Perhaps a metaphor for that we have a story here. The scorpion asks who did the scorpion ask? Not the whale. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
don't know that story.
Crocodile.
The frog.
Crocodile.
The
Alligator.
crocodile. So the scorpion asked the crocodile, "Can you help me cross the river?" And the crocodile said, "You must be kidding. You're going to bite me and we'll both die." And the scorpion say, "Why would I do that? I mean, I want to go to the other side of the street. I don't want to die." So the crocodile was convinced. So he jumped on the crocodile's back, and halfway through the river, he punched the crocodile. And the crocodile said, "What did you do? I mean, now we are going to die. We talked about it." And the scorpion said, "Welcome to the Middle East." This is very, very common. Try to understand where I am from and where I am right now. So
Yeah, I'm going to go to Kathy now. Over. Kathy, your turn.
Hi, Ofer. Thank you.
Hi,
Okay.
so nice to see you, Kathy. Kathy and
Nice
I
to
go,
see you too.
what, 40 years back?
Mm.
Right. Yeah. Well, so Charlene's on this call. Charlene and I are in a book club. We're reading the book A Paragon. Do you know that book? It's a new,
Called?
it's a new, A Paragon.
A
And a
paragon?
paragon is, a APEI
A paragon or a paragon?
ROGON.
Paradigm.
A paragon, she
Paragon.
just said.
And a paragon is something that's multi-sided, many-sided. So it's actually the story of this Palestinian and Israeli whose daughters were both killed by when was the Palestinian girl was murdered by an Israeli shooter, and the Israeli girl was murdered by a suicide bomber. And anyway, they have an organization called the Parent Circle. Do you know of that? And that basically brings both sides together to talk about this. But anyway, it's a very good book. It illuminates really what you're saying, the complexities of the whole thing, that's underneath it all. And these 2 men have actually, Charlene found an interview, an interview from a bookstore with these 2 men. So they do go around and anyway, I guess my question would be, but it's a good book. They refer to several charities and things that are working for peace, combatants for peace.
What's the
and
question, Kathy?
Telos.
Yeah, what's your question?
Anyway, just what's your next step? What's your next step? I mean, what's next for you? That's kind of what.
And if you can write the name of that book in the chat box, Kathy, that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's next for you, Ofer?
The answer for
What's
is to
next for
continue.
you with this issue?
The answer is that I continue to throw tantrums.
Mm.
I've done it for a long time, all over the world. You have heard enough of them back in the years at CIS. And I'll try, because I was a wounded lieutenant paratrooper, I can say things that a lot of people cannot. So it's very hard just to tell me you're anti-Semitic or it takes. So I'm right now using the airplane as a metaphor to remind the world and Israelis and Jews that it's right now, it's where we started today, and Georgia invited me for that October 7th did not happen in a vacuum. And hopefully this understanding will bring some arrangement, some kind of peace arrangement in the Middle East with the West Bank. But it's so complex that when I thought give them a state and everything will be okay, we cannot say that anymore, Kathy. So the solution seems like one state. Good luck with that after October. So even Dr. Zur has no answer, but I'm standing in the complexities, mapping them, and hopefully to be a first step into something. But I don't have it, Kathy. I don't know. It's not my style not to know. So we are standing in incredible complex junction where two people that you described that lost a child or killed or me killing or losing a calf. So it's a few generations. We also in the Middle East, we don't work quarterly. We can work quarter century. It's not like in America that you invest things and things happen, in the next month or two. There's kind of long-term way of viewing history here. I'm not sure if I can call it patience, but there's more tolerance to the ambiguity and who knows what will evolve, like with a scorpion. It's not about making sense. I'm sorry, it's not a good answer.
It does make sense because I think what you're saying is basically you are not, and I think most of us are not in a place of knowing what the solution can be yet. It's like there's not enough there to know what the solution would be. We're not there yet. We can't figure that out. And I think
it's not only we cannot figure it out because we don't have the imagination. We have to see how things.
No, that's what I meant.
Yeah, you're right. So we are not there time-wise.
Right.
And it's a bad place because people killed as you and I speaking right now.
Right.
It's not that simple. Oh, let's see what transpires. It's much more complex than that because people are being killed as we speak.
Right.
And I'm upset like hell.
I'm going to go to Charlene, and then we're going to probably end with Mike. So Charlene, you're up. You want to unmute?
Yes. So I just want to, first of all, thank you very much for holding this Zoom meeting. And thank you, Georgia, for doing that. Thank you, Ofer, for your transparency and, sharing your grief and your struggle. I can't relate to the specifics, but I can relate to a feeling of guilt and regret for things that I've done in my life or maybe not even done because but anyway, thank you. And just to say something on the topic of a paragon, and to tie it to what you're sharing with today is that I feel like in both cases, both in what you're sharing and in what the book is about, is this grief, this personal grief that takes one to the depth of suffering that really it's like it feels like, and these two men, the book is a novel, but it's based on their story, and they speak with the author because he came and heard them, and he just was broken by their story. So anyway, without getting too much in that, just to say that I feel like the answers are in the grief, in the suffering, and
In the guilt, for me, and in the guilt, in the appropriate, responsible guilt.
Right, and Rami El-Hanan, the Israeli man who lost his daughter in the suicide bombing, he was in the Israeli military, and so he shared things that you felt too, that you experienced. So I really recommend the book, and I thank you deeply for your sharing tonight.
Great, thanks, Charlene. Mike, you want to go again?
First, I was just wondering, Georgia, I actually thought it was going till 9. I'm wrong about that.
I think something was there was
7 to
an
9.
erroneous
Okay.
announcement on the new website that I realized later. I don't even know where that came from.
Okay.
And you're the only person.
Regretfully, probably we'll do some more because it's not going to go away. I'm flying back on Tuesday if I don't get bombed on the way.
You're not going to. I told you you're under the Praxis protection plan.
You know, I shouldn't do that, but you know.
No, you'll say, I'll do that to you when you get back.
What does it cost to be in that plan, Georgia? What does that cost?
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
So first, just real quick, and you don't even have to answer this right now. I'm just wondering, there's a woman who's I understood was pretty well known over there, and happens to be a cousin of a friend of mine in Mill Valley. Her name is Dahlia Landau, and her husband was Yehezkel Landau. The lemon tree is about them. She gave her house back to the Palestinians when she was about 19 years old. But anyway, I don't know if that's something that you would know about, but she's just an incredible woman. I've seen her on a lot of Zooms. But so back to this all this horrible stuff again, because I just again hear a lot of things. Want to know if your thoughts on it. What do you say? These are my what do you say to people questions. What do you say to people who say that Hamas specifically hides in schools, synagogues, maternity wards? It's where they build their tunnels. It's where they, I guess, supposedly stock weapons or whatever the hell people say they do. And that it's okay for them that innocents, men, women, and children, specifically babies, are being killed. They don't care about that. This is what I hear, supposedly, because then they all become martyrs and the world feels pity for them, and the billions of dollars from all over the world, and the compassion comes pouring into them because these innocents are being killed. Is there any truth to that?
That makes me
That they allow it to happen? I'm just asking.
That makes me angry to hear anyone believes that crap. Sorry.
Actually, it's knowing how small the size of Israel, it's the size of the Bay Area. So in Israel, the military and the civilian life are not separated because there's not much place to separate. So it's not unusual to mix military and civilian on either end. So I think it's right that some of the headquarters were in schools. I can tell you some of the Israeli headquarters are in very public places. So the place is small, and you are right, and the people who doesn't agree with you are right. It's back to Scorpio.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the things are happening on both sides. And to point out that it's only happening on the other side is to not really get what's going on.
Mhm.
It's happening on both sides in different ways because they have different levels of armor.
And there's no choice much because the place is so small.
Right.
It's not like Vietnam.
Right,
It's
which-
not like, what is it in Europe, what did Soviet Union, whatever, Croatia. No, where was it? It's not far. It's
It's right next door. Yes.
it's 2 inches from, it's actually no inches between East Jerusalem that I crossed back and forth the other day. So this separation that is possible here, not possible there. So both sides, and I wouldn't say guilty on that. It just both sides existentially involved with that. It's part of our existence here.
Both sides are yeah. I will take another question if someone wants to ask something, because I know Ofer said he would go a little bit longer if you want. But if nobody does,
So I have a question.
okay, go ahead, Ofer.
What I'm going to do with my sister?
Ah, good question. You know why she isn't speaking to you, so you don't have to ask her why.
Send her an airplane, paper airplane.
Yeah, send her a paper airplane.
Sorry.
That's what you need. Yeah.
I like that, Mike.
So I have a writing story in English, in Arabic, and now in Hebrew. What a thought, actually. I'm going to, God, okay.
That's a very good suggestion.
There you go. All right.
Oh my God. I'm going to do it. Wow. Okay, I have the planes up there. Okay.
Yeah, see, it's
Seriously? Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, it's like 6 a.m. there.
Yeah.
She doesn't have an Uzi on her, thank God. So, but I'll do that. I'll send it to my sister to say sorry. Wow.
I'll be very curious to know what happens after that.
Okay,
you're
we are
not
going to
really
another
sorry.
round, no doubt.
You
I'm
just
coming
have a
back
different-
Wednesday.
What were you saying, Kathy?
You're not really sorry. You just have a different opinion. You just have a different point of view.
Well, to say
You're
the
sorry
least.
that you can't bridge the gap, or that she's, yeah, you're sorry not to
Sorry
do
that
some more
this
time
has
with it.
happened, but not that you disagree with what you said.
Okay, I'll let you know about it. Thank you
Yeah,
so
let
much.
us know what happens.
Can I ask the group a quick question? So
Sure, go ahead.
just quick. Does anybody, thanks.
No,
Does
I want you to give suggestions more than questions. I mean, we need you.
Go with the paper airplane first, see what happens. But and maybe try some matzo ball soup or something like that. But does anybody think that possibly with this incredible sort of new influx of positivity and put a woman in charge and all this that's happening in America, is there any chance in the next few months that people think that some kind of a, God help us, some kind of a ceasefire or some kind of a temporary solution could happen? Because if they can do that, if this current government can do that here in the next few months, I think that would be just an incredible thing. I'm praying for that, but I don't know if you think or anybody here thinks that it's possible to do something in the next few
You
months.
know, my dissertation was 200 years ago, where Kathy ran the show in soon before Kathy ran the show in CIS with Ralph, with precious Ralph Metzner. Where was I? Hold on.
Well, if you think there's any
Your
hope.
dissertation. What did you say? Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. My dissertation was on the role of women in the make of war. So, unlike, I mean, I really, that's a good question because I'm going to piss off Georgia and I haven't done it yet. So, that's a good chance to.
That's okay. I can always mute you, Ofer.
I know.
I have the mute button.
I'm aware of that, and I'll be proud of myself. If you mute me, I'll feel a success. So the mythology is that war is a man institution, and I have a dissertation, and women may go to war for different reasons. Women between Golda, Indira Gandhi, and Margaret Thatcher's are not known necessarily for any peaceful thing. So the mythology that women are peaceful, and when they run the countries, there'll be peace in the world.
Well, as long, I'm going to really argue with you right now, Ofer.
I know.
As women are the minority people in power, the minority gender in power, they're going to act like honorary men. And that's exactly what Golda Meir was, exactly what Margaret Thatcher was, Hillary Clinton. They all acted like honorary men. They're not acting like women in power. If you want to see how women in power look, you look to Norway, you look to Finland, where women are 40% at least of the parliament. Then you see women acting very different. They're not acting like honorary militant men. That's my 2 cents.
We are going to respectfully disagree or disrespectfully disagree, but I don't want to open my mouth. She's going to mute me.
No, well, we don't want to get into a whole other thing at this point. If we're finished with the main part of our program here, which is really looking at what's going on in Israel, what you're bringing up is a whole other topic, which I do not see getting into here tonight. So, if anyone wants to talk anything more about what's going on in Israel, or ask Ofer a question, or give him a suggestion about his sister, we've got 5 minutes for that.
Nancy.
What?
Nancy wants to talk, but you have to unmute her.
Okay, she probably has to unmute herself. Nancy, can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Great.
Okay now.
Yes.
That's okay, but we can hear you. What?
As a family therapist the last 45 years,
Sorry.
in response to your sister, and I really appreciate Georgia coming back to that. Every day I would write down all the ways that you have loved her and that you have experienced love from her during your lifetime. And because her brain cannot get to her heart, it's out of balance. So she's thinking about what you do or what you have done or you're doing. I would not send an airplane. I think it's sort of sarcastic. And that won't build back and mend anything. And the second thing is, I do believe through all the continuing education credits I have taken in the last 30 years from you.
So sorry.
No, I love it. I don't go anyplace else but to the Zur Institute. I do believe in the collective unconscious. And I think your sister was in the Muslim woman's hug to you. Because your sister could not be so angry with you without loving you. I mean,
Yeah, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. You're right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's my response to what do you do with your sister? Prayers and writing down all the ways that you have experienced love from her and the ways that you have loved her from childhood on.
And to take it bigger, I think it's maybe the answer to a lot of questions around the complexity of our time. So what you say, it's sister and me, but actually the question is much bigger. Jews and non-Jews, Israelis and Palestinian. So we'll take your idea and run with that on a global, international, national level as a way of resolving.
Well, here's a place where the airplane might work. You could just send the airplane and say, let's talk.
No, but she's right. Just the vision of the airplane gets people pissed off. It's not a word. I mean, it doesn't matter what I write or what I mean.
I get
you
it.
understand.
It's what
Yeah,
it's what it symbolizes.
I think the matzo ball soup would be better.
so what?
Mike suggested take her some matzo ball soup. I said, I think that would be better.
Right. That's cute.
I mean, I was kidding about the air. It was Ofer's idea about the airplane, not mine. So I just thought he'd just use the idea. So yeah, that's just kind of a joke. But
Metaphor
anyway.
both ways. Well, I think we are pretty much out of time. This has been a really, I think, very interesting and deep talk about what's going on, both in Israel and what's going on in our own minds around war and around atrocities and destruction.
And you have been so fantastic to really catch me here. You insisted on doing it when I'm here. And I said, what's the fuck at the beginning? Sorry. And, so it's like, so, but it was having it here created my visit here. What I'm going to relate to that when I talk to Georgia, it's like it was incredible experience for me to have this visit, knowing we are going to do it here. So thank you. You create another level of meaning for me for this experience as I'm in the West Bank and going Monday to as close as I can get to Gaza.
Yeah. Well, we will talk when you get back, and I want to thank you.
If I come back.
Yeah, well, I told you already you're coming back. So I know this, and you should know it too. But I want to thank you, Ofer. This has really been rich, unusual that we could have such an opportunity with you being there. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.